Checkity check. How's everybody doing this fine evening on this latest episode of the show? And a couple things. Yes, you have been misled. I have been untruthful. I have said things that were exaggerated. And that is that I said on the last two episodes that I wasn't going to have another episode before the year was out. And here we are again because things happened and I had some stuff I wanted to talk about. So I admit I fibbed a little bit on that, apparently. Not really knowing. I had every intention to, after episode 3, I had every intention of just being done for the year and then going on into 25. But, some things came up. And I did want to do this a few days ago, actually. And I didn't get to it. I had other things that come up. I had other videos I had to make. And I came down with a cold, as you can tell. I'm a bit sniffly, I'm a bit coughy, I'm a bit just run down. I have a cold. It's cold season. And so that's what's happening with me. So we're just going to have to suffer through it together here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the full hour. I'm going to try to, because I have plenty to talk about, but I don't know how I'm going to feel. So I might rush it and kind of squish it all together into just a lump. But we'll see. I've got 100 proof in my cup, so that should help a little bit. And this cat's screaming at me. I don't know what his deal is now. But we'll get to that later. So how's everybody doing? Did everybody have a good Thanksgiving? I think my last episode was before Thanksgiving, because that's what we had here in the United States. International listeners, you may or may not have had anything like that. It's a United States kind of thing, Thanksgiving, because it commemorates when the first of us arrived on these shores and had some troubles. Had to share some feasts with the natives before we ended up murdering all of them. I know some people are going to be mad about that. They're like, and I'm not going to get into the context of all that. I'm just saying a lot of that is a fact. We did end up murdering a lot of them because we were technologically superior. We had the gunpowder, we had all that kind of stuff, and they didn't. They were a much more simple society, and despite the fact that they knew the land, we were the more determined. So it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate part of our history. We have a lot of unfortunate things in our history here in the United States. And I don't want to say this to excuse it. I just want to say that in context, that is true of a lot of other nations. The United Kingdom has a lot of atrocities in its background. France has a lot of atrocities in its background. They have a revolution almost every generation. Their government just collapsed today, actually, as of this recording. They had a vote of no confidence, and whatever they had going on in their government completely fell apart. So I don't know where they're going to go from there. They have to build a new government, which is kind of mind-boggling to me. Like, it's crazy how you can't just get down to the business of running the country, right? And you have governments fall apart. It's kind of like here in the United States when if they don't approve a funding bill, then everything stops. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. If you're a politician and you have a job to do and you've messed it up to the point where there's not enough money going around, that's your fault. That's not the people's fault. That's your fault. And you kind of have to take the lump on that, and you have to just you have to work for free until the situation is rectified, because you have to run a country. right? You have to run a country. The very idea that a country can run out of money and then have to shut down until they get more funding is just ludicrous to me. It's absolutely ludicrous. But anyway, Thanksgiving for people who celebrate that kind of thing. We did go out of town, me and my family. We did visit my half of the family. My daughter and her mom will meet. Well, not meet. They know them all, obviously, but they're gonna go spend Christmas with the other half of the family, and I'll probably stay at home because I don't really care for Christmas that much. And I don't like driving that distance either in that kind of weather. So I don't really have anything against other people's families. I don't really do holidays. I know we went to do Thanksgiving, but that's more, in my eyes, it's more for my daughter to go see family. And I don't mind seeing my family. I'm not like families are complicated. I'll say that. Families are complicated. And I don't have any sort of active like dislike for anybody in my family, my immediate family. I've never been one to go and do family gatherings very well. So if it, was my thing, I just wouldn't really leave the house very often, to be honest. I mean, that makes me sound like I'm kind of like, well, you're the bad person in your family because you're neglectful. And people can think what they think and whatever. I mean, I take care of my family here, my little 3-person family, and all the animals we have and stuff. I don't. That's what's important for me. The immediacy right here is what's important. But we went out of town. We went to visit, and then had the meal. And I'm not a big sports guy. You guys know that. You folks know that. Excuse me. I've got sinus drainage and things from the cold. Maybe some Southern Comfort here will help. But I'm not a big sports guy. But they had on the, because every year on Thanksgiving, the NFL has a game of some kind. I remember when I was younger, often it had something like Green Bay was often one of the featured people on the Thanksgiving thing. I think Green Bay and the Raiders. I don't remember where the Raiders are anymore. Are they the Oakland Raiders now? They moved around a couple times. But they'd had a game, I think, I don't know, at some point when I was a kid. But this year it was Detroit, the Lions versus the Chicago Bears. And the Lions are one of the highest rated teams in their division, according to the stats. And the Bears are not. The Bears had been struggling. And it was a good game for a while. Like, Detroit was really running rampant, like really way in the lead. And then Chicago just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And they had great defense. Really great defense. And then they ended up the last minute of the game, it was 20-23. The Bears were under, Chicago was under, and Detroit was over. And it was Chicago's ball. And they had a really good opportunity that they could have taken that game in that very end bit. It would have been a heck of an ending. But they did a couple of really just dumb plays, and they let the clock run out, and they made some really awful mistakes, that were kind of unforgivable if you're really into that kind of stuff. And my brother-in-law, he was like, "Hey, you know what? There's a coach that's going to be fired for that," and I didn't think much of it. He's more into that kind of stuff than I am. But a few days later, come to find out that the coach responsible for that last couple of plays in Chicago, he got fired. So, dude was right, and it was a pretty catastrophic end. So, Detroit went on to continue being the best in the division. The Chicago went on to not. I guess you could say. But it was an interesting game. It wasn't bad. And like I said, we had a meal and came home. I did my game stream. I usually do. Oh, excuse me. I've been sneezing like crazy with this cold here. And for anybody wondering, yeah, it's just a cold. It's not like the big scary virus of 2020 or anything. It's nothing like that. It's just a cold. I get them every so often. We all do. It's the common cold. It just happens when the weather changes, and you just got to get through it. You just got to get through it. Build up that immune system, right? So I try to stay away from people, and I try to cover up my face when I'm sneezing and coughing and stuff. I pull my shirt up and things like that. I don't want to get my germs all over everybody. And so that's that. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah, I got home, did my game streams, went to bed early. Black Friday, I did a Black Friday game-a-thon where I did a lengthy 3-hour stream for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. It's on YouTube. Spider Does Things on YouTube. This broadcast will end up there within a certain amount of time. The last one I almost forgot about, episode 3. I forgot to transplant it to YouTube until it was like a week or two later, maybe longer. But it's up now, so you can listen to the first 3 episodes. This will be going up to Spotify and to various other podcast places. It's probably on there right now, actually. It's probably broadcasting live now. But it'll be up within a few minutes, and then within a few days after that, I'll port it over to YouTube so that you folks over on the YouTube can hear it as well. But that was my Thanksgiving. If anybody else had a different Thanksgiving they want to talk about, by all means, you can tell me about it. You can send me an email at uncannyspiritsclub@gmail.com. Or when this gets onto YouTube, you can drop a comment. And apparently on Spotify, you can make comments on Spotify now. I don't know how long that's been a thing. Maybe it's been a thing for quite a long time, and I just didn't notice it. Because I don't use Spotify myself quite as much as other people do. I check it every so often and make sure everything's running smooth there. But I don't, it's not one of my common things that I use. If I want to listen to music, I generally pull up MP3s on my laptop here and send it to the surround sound. And I'm always getting new albums and buying new things, and then ripping up into MP3s to listen to for portability. I've been doing that for years, to be honest. I still buy CDs because I still like to support artists that I'm really into, or that I think the album art is good, or just, to have a CD in my hands sometimes. I'm still part of that old school outlook where having a physical product is still a nice thing to have. And then, but I have a fairly extensive MP3 collection. I've been doing that for the better part of 20 years. It's crazy to think that that things like MP3s have been around that long. Like, I remember first getting into digital music in high school because it was a new thing. You could get digital music from places. That was back when Napster and all those other places were getting big, and bands were just starting to dip their toes into it, but they didn't know how to control it, so you had a lot of places that were ripping them off, and there were a lot of lawsuits and that kind of stuff. Peer-to-peer file networks were starting to crop up to counter that kind of thing, and for people to get away with their piracy. And when I moved out of my folks' place in, I think it was maybe 22, what am I talking about? 2002, maybe 2003. I think it was 2002, but it might have been 2001. But somewhere around there, I started getting into torrents, where you could download entire collections of things if you had the right internet speed. And I'd never had the right internet speed when I was at my folks' place because we had dial-up internet, and it took like 5 hours for a single song if you were lucky. If the person on the other end didn't go offline, and if nobody made a phone call on your end that had to be answered, you know? And, but torrents, and now torrents aren't as big a thing anymore. Now it's gone back to... Now it's mostly streaming. Like, most piracy... There is still some out there, but it's mostly for games and things, which I don't do, because I don't do anything on PC, so I don't pirate games. I pay for my games, if anybody's out there listening, hoping to turn me into the various, like, FBI-style people. I pay for my games, I go through the Xbox console library, and I buy them from there. I don't do anything on PC with games. But that's, like, that and movies are still the big areas where people pirate things. But even now, you can put movies on YouTube, and YouTube will just be like, all right, well, you can't monetize it, and it's under copyright to somebody else, but as long as they don't object, you can put it up, and then the other people from the copyright will get their pay from it in some automatic way, which is weird, as long as nobody complains. So you see a lot of third-party people putting on movies on YouTube now, whole entire movies, straight from DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. It's wild. It's a crazy landscape as far as digital stuff nowadays compared to when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, like a kid before I got into high school and things, we still had cassette tapes. And CDs were new. I mean, CDs had been around since the late 80s. But I grew up in the early 80s. I was alive through most of the 80s into the 90s. I'm still alive now, as a matter of fact. And CDs were still kind of expensive when I was a kid, but they had been getting cheaper and cheaper, and by the time I was old enough to start getting some of them myself, they were a pretty good price, to be honest, and everything was on CD. And then, of course, there was the transition from CD to MP3 and that kind of thing. And now everybody's big on vinyl again, and even there's some bands like Deftones put out a recent album a couple years back. I don't remember when their last one came out. It's been a couple of years now. They put it out on cassette tape, like a limited edition cassette tape for people who wanted that. Like, cassette was never really good. The fidelity was never great. Vinyl had stopped being good after a while because the companies weren't producing high-end vinyl equipment anymore. So it didn't matter what quality the vinyl product itself was. You weren't getting to listen to it in the quality it was intended to. So it all sounded scratchy and kind of bad. And then the people making the vinyl kind of just said heck with it, and they didn't really worry about it. So it's coming back around, but you still get a lot of vinyl that's not great. And unless you have a nice setup to listen to it on, you're not going to get the most out of it anyway. So a lot of people don't think about that. They think, oh, I'm just going to hook it up to my home stereo. Okay. You do that. But yeah, I don't know what got us started on all that. How we ended up talking about MP3s and digital stuff. I don't know. I don't know how we ended up doing that, because that was not on my agenda for tonight. But let's move on to something that was and is on my agenda for tonight that I wanted to talk about. I watched, some of you folks know I watch some of the wrestling stuff. I watch WWE stuff. I don't watch a lot of the other guys because I can't get into it. And I actually can't watch most WWE stuff right now because I don't have a channel package, so I can't watch USA Network or some of those other things that it's on. I will be able to watch it when it's on Netflix, because it's coming to Netflix in January. WWE, one of their weekly shows, is coming to Netflix. But I do have the Peacock app. so I can watch the what used to be called the pay-per-views. Now they're called premium live events because you don't pay-per-view anymore. You don't get them off of HBO or whatever. But I did watch the premium live event. I watched Survivor Series, which was November 30th, because it was the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And it was decent. It was decent for the most part. I'm not going to get too deep into every match. I'm going to go into some highlights and things like that I liked, and some things that I did not like. One of the things I did not like was the opening match, which was the women's War Games match. If you're not a wrestling person and you don't know what War Games is, you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about, so you can probably kind of tune out for a little while. But if you are, you're going to know. And, you know, I'm so conflicted about the women's wrestling on WWE. Because I know, and I have seen it, I've seen some very talented, excellent female wrestlers. I saw back in the early 2000s, late 90s, I saw some excellent female wrestlers. There's always been, for the most part, as long as they've had lady wrestlers, there's been some talented ones, just like the male ones, and there's been some crappy ones, just like the male ones. But this match was just so sloppy. And it never really picked up. Like, it tried to several times, but it never got good. There were a couple of really great moments, like when there was a moment where a fire extinguisher was let off in the ring, and in the confusion, Rhea Ripley, who's one of the really better lady wrestlers right now, she handcuffed one of her rivals, Raquel Rodriguez, to the ropes so that she couldn't interfere in other things. So that was a good little spot. But it was not a good match. Like, and it bums me out because several of the ladies in the match, I've seen them, because War Games, I don't want to get into everything for people who haven't seen it, but it involves 10 people. If it's a women's War Games match, it's 10 women, 5 per team. So you got 2 teams, 5 on each team. And most of the people in the match, I've seen them have really great matches. I know they're talented. And I know they're just as good, if not better, than many of the male wrestlers. So it's not like an equality thing, like, oh man, they're lady wrestlers, so the match sucked. That had nothing to do with it. I know for a fact, because I've seen it, that a lot of these ladies are very talented, and they can do things that I can't do by a mile. Like, it's no contest. They can do things that I would never in a million years be able to accomplish in any physical shape I've ever had from my youth on up to now. Okay? But they were... The only thing I can think of is that they didn't get enough practice before this. And I'm gonna get into something. I know some people are gonna be mad that I'm doing something called pulling back the curtain, or breaking kayfabe. Kayfabe is a wrestling word for suspension of disbelief, basically. But wrestling's choreographed. We know that. We know it's choreographed. We know they have things that they do. They're very athletic people. Don't get that mistaken. They're very athletic, and it does require a lot of effort to do some of the things that they do, to jump, to lift, to move around. You can't say, quote, fake, unquote. You can't say wrestling is fake. It's not straight up fake. Yes, it's predetermined. Yes, it's choreographed to an extent, but the effort that they put into what they're doing is more effort than most that I can do, more effort than most of you can do. I don't care if you're offended when I say that, but you go out there, if you're not somebody like that, and you go try to do what they do, for a month. I can't do it. I'll say right now, I can't do it. I don't have any problem saying that. That's not downing on myself either. I just know I don't have the physical capability of doing that, so I'm not even going to pretend. So it's got a level of choreography to it. They have to practice things. They have to do things ahead of time. And it was really clear that they just had not worked together very well ahead of time on this match, because it was sloppy, it was all over the place, and it just wasn't good. It was the worst match of the night, to be honest, and I hate saying that because it was the only women's match of the night. And that bums me out, because I know most of those ladies can do better, and have done better, and routinely do better. And I don't want to call anybody out specifically. I don't want to say it was obviously this person who seemed like the worst or the least practiced or things. I don't want to do that, because I don't know what goes on backstage. I don't know what exactly led to the state of what this was, but it wasn't a good match. But the good team won. The team of the quote-unquote good guys, although they're ladies, so the good ladies versus the villain ladies. So that was fun. You had a match for the United States title between LA Knight and Shinsuke Nakamura, who's been out for a while. This is his first match back. He made a return, because he'd been out for some weeks, maybe a few months actually. And he came back with a slightly new look and a new theme song and a darker persona, so he's clearly a bad guy. And he was battling LA Knight for the United States Championship, which LA Knight won at SummerSlam back in August. And that was a good match, and I don't like LA Knight. Like, I think he's overdone, I think he's overhyped, I'm not a big fan of his gimmick. And I'm not going to say that I was a huge Shinsuke Nakamura fan, but he did really good in this. He was calculating, he was cautious, he was just on point, and LA Knight sold it like it was... man, it was good. It was a good match. Spoilers. I mean, I know I said the last one without spoilers, the winners of the last match. But if you haven't watched it yet, you're going to be disappointed because I'm going to spoil things for you. But if you have watched it, here we go. But Shinsuke won, so he's the United States champion now. So the bad guy is the United States champion, which is always a fun thing, because he's Japanese, I think. I think he's Japanese. I don't know for sure. I don't want people to get mad at me and be like, no, he's Laotian, or he's Chinese, or he's Vietnamese, or something. I don't know. Okay, I have to admit, I am not great at various facial features from the different Asian stock people. I don't know. Like, I can't look at people of pale skin and be like, oh, obviously they're Scandinavian, or obviously they're whatever, or people from South America. I can't tell you the difference between Venezuelan and Ecuador or Brazil. I just don't have that ability to see off first glance. So I don't want people to think I'm stereotyping by calling him Japanese because he looks Japanese to me. If he isn't, then I apologize. I don't want to impugn his nationality. But he won, and so he's... What they usually do, and this is stereotyping, but not on my part. This is stereotyping on WWE's part, because that's a long history of doing that. Since he's got the United States title now, but he's obviously an Asian person, he's got the foreign menace gimmick in the hearts and minds of the people. That's why he's a bad guy, because they always... If you have a person who's Russian in the WWE, they're almost always a bad guy. I'm not saying they need to be, or they should be, or that it's right that they are. I'm just saying that's how it always goes. He's the foreign menace, quote-unquote, and that's always been a successful wrestling stereotype, because that's kind of baked into the history of wrestling, and I don't know if we're going to get over it anytime soon. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. So you're going to get some attention from that because the fans are going to be like, oh, boo, he's a bad guy, give it back to the American, that kind of thing, even though he probably lives in America, Anyway. You had a triple threat match with Braun Breaker, who's the son of Rick Steiner and the nephew of Scott Steiner, who's one of my favorite wrestlers. Scott Steiner is one of my favorites. He was so over the top, ridiculous. He's the Intercontinental Champion. So it was him in a triple threat match versus Ludwig Kaiser, who I believe is German, and Sheamus, who is an Irishman. Sheamus has been around a long time. He's the veteran of the whole bunch. Kaiser isn't bad. He's kind of a smarmy kind of heel who will do whatever he can to cheat and get away with stuff. And he works with Gunther. Gunther is Austrian. He's the world heavyweight champion right now. And we'll get to him later because he has a match too. And I don't like triple threat matches or like fatal four-way matches because they always seem like they go on longer than they need to because anybody can break up the thing. It takes a lot longer to get anything done, and the momentum comes and goes. But this was pretty good. They're all very talented people, even though I've never been a big Sheamus fan. He did a good job here. The other two guys did a good job here, and it ended up with a Braun Breaker win. He's been fairly dominant since he's been here because of his family tree, I suppose, his genetics. He's just predisposed to being good at the business, and he was very good here. It was one of the more entertaining triple threat matches that I've seen. I generally don't like them, but I enjoyed this one. It wasn't bad. And then there was a match between Gunther and Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight title. Damian Priest had been the champion. He'd had the Money in the Bank. And again, if you don't follow the wrestling stuff, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you do, then you're in the know. He'd cashed it in on Drew McIntyre after Drew McIntyre had just won it from Seth Rollins. And so Damian Priest had been the champion for a little while, and then Gunther beat him at SummerSlam, which made me grouchy because, but it furthered the storyline of him having problems with his former group because he'd been in the Judgment Day, and they turned on him at SummerSlam. Because you had Finn Balor, and Finn Balor's still messing with him, and Finn Balor is part of the reason why he lost here as well. He lost to Gunther again, and it was a pretty solid match. It went on a bit long, and they milked some of the injury stuff a bit too much. But it wasn't a bad match either. And you can kind of see a pattern from these matches based on... It makes that first women's match just look that much worse, that a couple of these middle matches were just okay, but I liked them so much more. And I wanted to like the women's match better. I did. I really wanted to, but they just did not do it. And it's not because they were women. Again, it had nothing to do with the fact that they were female. And just that they clearly hadn't practiced enough. Somebody had not put enough effort into this match, and that's a management problem. I don't think that's a problem necessarily with the people involved with the match. I think that's a management problem. The trainers and whoever, I think they could have done more to make sure everybody was prepared for that, and it would have been a greater match. Anyway, enough about that. So Gunther retains the title, and then Finn Balor, because he'd interfered, and then that led to them having some kind of a feud on the Monday night afterwards, which, I'm not going to get into in this review here, but if anybody wants to know that storyline is continuing. And I think that was it for the regular matches before then. I think, the final match was the second War Games match was the men's War Game match between the New Bloodline and the Old Bloodline plus CM Punk. And the Old Bloodline is the Usos, Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, and then they brought in CM Punk as a favor from Paul Heyman. If you don't know why, it's because you haven't watched any of this stuff leading up to that, so you got to do that because there's a lot of history. And then the new bloodline, of course, you got Solo Sikoa, you got Jacob Fatu, who's just intense, and you got the Tongans, of which Tama Tonga is just, he's a beast too. Tama Tonga's a beast as well. He's creepy. He came in the first to run around the ring, and he was like crawling along the walls like a spider. It was crazy. It was crazy. And but this match was better by miles than that first match. So it wasn't just the match type that was the problem. I mean, it was still a little sloppy because you have that many people. You got 10 people in a ring, a pair of rings, trying to coordinate all this stuff and keep the audience's attention. Oh, and you also had Bronson Reed on the new bloodline with Solo and Jacob Fatu and the Tongans. He was picked up from them. And that was a good match. And Roman's team won. And it set up some various things between the people on his team with each other, because CM Punk was only there as a favor. He doesn't like anybody on the team for the most part. And it sets up a final battle between Roman and Solo Sikoa later on in the year or probably next year in 25, for the final control of the ancestral necklace or whatever it is. Depending on how long they want to milk that out. I don't know. But it was good. It was a great match. And I enjoyed it. And there weren't any surprises. There weren't any surprise appearances. Nobody showed up like old superstars showing up with a grudge or anything like that. So it was pretty to the point. It was to the point. It got the job done. And other than that first match, I enjoyed the rest of it. If you want to watch it yourself in a lot more detail, because I know I went into some detail in some spots, but I also left a lot vague because I don't want to completely spoil the entire thing. You can watch it on Peacock, on the Peacock app. It is available under their WWE section. They have a dedicated section to various WWE product things. So what do we got next? Let's talk some music. I'm going to take a drink of my 100 proof here. It's good stuff. Marilyn Manson. Still a controversial figure to this day, which kind of fascinates me. He's from Ohio. He doesn't live here anymore, but he's from Ohio originally. From this town, from the very town that I live in, is where he was raised. Before moving to Florida and then eventually getting into big business in California and everything from there. But he put out a new album, which is his first album in a while, because he'd been embroiled in a lot of things. He'd gotten arrested for spitting at a camera person at a show once, I think. Recently, he'd had domestic abuse charges and things, claims against him. A lot of that stuff got thrown out. I can't say that he wasn't guilty, but I can't say that he was innocent either. Wasn't innocent either. I don't know. I just know some things got settled, and he had been going through... The last few albums have been kind of subpar. I've liked some songs here and there, but it's been obvious that he's had trouble with his voice. He wasn't nearly as good as the heyday. Hollywood from 2000... What was it? 2000 something. I don't remember what year it was. Somewhere in the 2000s. Hollywood was my favorite album of his, and I still play it every year on Christmas, which you might think that's a weird thing to do, especially for somebody who doesn't celebrate Christmas. What's the deal? because that's when I got it from my folks, when I still lived with my folks before I moved out. It was the only Marilyn Manson album they ever bought me because I had it on my list. And they told me, you know what, we don't like it. We'd rather you didn't listen to it, but if you get money of your own from birthdays and from holidays or whatever, you're going to end up buying it yourself anyways, so we might as well just get it for you. Just please don't play it too loud in the house while we're around. So I got it on Christmas Day when it was new, and I've listened to it every Christmas since then. Kind of like a weird tradition that I have that only means something to me. But since that album, they've never been quite as good. He had the Golden Age of Grotesque after that, which was still kind of okay. He still had his vocal chops. Then after that, I believe, was Eat Me, Drink Me, where it really started to show that he was starting to suffer, like vocally. And that was when apparently he'd really started to develop a pretty bad alcohol problem. He'd endorsed certain things, and he'd been getting a lot of free stuff, and and that continued for several albums. It just sounded like his vocals were shot. Every time he tried to do any sort of screaming or anything with higher pitch, it wasn't the same. And the live shows were suffering. I saw him on tour some years ago with Rob Zombie, the last time he was through here in town. And it was okay. But there were a couple songs that were just completely fell apart. The Dope Show was terrible. He couldn't stay on key for the entire song. It was just bad. But I think it was the best I could have gotten out of him in that era. So I didn't expect a lot out of this album when it was announced that he had new stuff coming out. I was like, well, I'll check it out because I've picked up everything else. You know, I've stayed a loyal fan. And this one is good. It's the best album he has had in a decade, at least. It's fantastic. It's not like the best thing he's ever done, but it's the best thing he's put out in a decade, which makes it seem all the better. It reminds me of Mechanical Animals in tone, because it sounds like kind of a little bit of the glam rock thing mixed with some modern hard rock stuff, because he's been touring with people like Five Finger Death Punch, who, in my opinion, I know people might get mad when I say this, but in my opinion, they're awful. They're not great. But that's just my opinion. That's not saying that they are awful as a definitive truth, whatever, of the universe. It's just I don't like them. And that's okay. I don't have to like them. You can like them if you want. If you think they're the best band ever and you think I'm full of it, by all means, that's a valid point. You can say that if you want. I can't argue that with you. But the music has a bit of that kind of generic radio rock sort of tone to parts of it, like in some of the guitar stuff. But overall, it's still it's cohesive. It sounds good, and his vocals sound much better. I had read in some news outlets a ways back that he had stopped indulging as much. Like he hadn't been drinking like he used to, and he was getting over his addictions and that kind of thing. And I don't think he's gone completely sober. Not that he needs to. I don't think anybody needs to. I mean, if you got problems, you got problems, and you need to deal with your problems. But I'm not generally I'm not a straight edge person. I don't do the whole sober thing. I drink. I'm drinking right now. But I'm not, I don't live my life as a drunk. Right? I don't go day to day completely drunk, trashed from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. I function, I do what I need to do in a day, and I have a particular time in the evenings, and that's when my drinking time is, when my daughter is asleep, and when there's nothing else I gotta do in a day. I just gotta do these radio shows or play games or whatever. I think that's a perfectly valid time if you're going to be a drinker. I'm not going out driving around. I'm not going to bars. I'm not causing a ruckus. There's degrees to everything, right? So I don't think he's gone completely 100% sober. But if he has, it's good for him then. You know, it's probably healthier. I'm sure it would be healthier if I completely gave up drinking. But it's something I like to do, and I'm still healthy enough. I know, I'm making excuses probably, and people are going to be worried about me, but I'm fine. Well, when you say you're fine, you're not fine. Whatever. There's no winning sometimes. There's no winning. But you can tell that he's more focused, that his mind is more in tune with what he's doing, that he's more collected, he's on track. The album is called One Assassination Under God, Chapter 1, which I think it's a clunky title. I'm not a big fan of it, but it doesn't really matter. It's not my album to create. I didn't have to name it. Whatever. But it's a good album. It's 9 tracks, so it's kind of short, but I recommend it if you're into that kind of stuff, and I say give it a try. I say give it a try because I really enjoyed it. I'm going to try to give it a few more spins before I give a final verdict on it, but I already know it's going to be probably one of the better albums I've heard this year. So we're getting towards the end of the show. We still have about 10, 15 minutes maybe. There's really no, I don't know. I've never said that I'm going to only do an hour every episode. It just seems naturally like that's what fits. So I could go longer. I'm not going to tonight, probably. I'm not feeling it. And I have a gaming video I gotta do after this is over. But I think an hour is comfortable. So we're getting towards the last, chunk of time on that. And we got to get into some political stuff. I know we've been talking about the aftermath of the election, and we've been talking about that kind of thing. This is kind of related to that, but also off on the side. Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter a day or so ago, as of this recording. And on the face of it, you'd think, well, it is his son, and he did say in his statement that he thinks it was politically motivated, whatever. Which is oddly something that Trump says about everything that comes after him. It was very similar language, which is kind of concerning. Because if you believe one person over the other, now they're both kind of talking the same. You might want to think about your political affiliations. I'm not telling anybody to suddenly turn to Trump, and I'm not telling somebody to drop all that. I didn't vote for either person or for Kamala. I didn't vote for any of them. So, I'm as politically neutral as you can get on this. But the thing that sticks out is there was a lot of speculation that when he was working for that Ukrainian gas company, that he had involved Joe in his Hunter Biden had involved his father Joe Biden in his dealings, because there was supposedly some evidence that said that he had some text messages or some emails or whatever. I don't know. I didn't get too deep into it because a lot of that is just political stabbings. A lot of it is just political attacks meant to make other people look bad. I didn't care about the Hillary emails. I didn't care about the Obama birth certificate. I still don't care about the Trump tax returns. None of that really matters. And if you think it matters, great for you, but think about it. Is it going to make a big difference? Is it? None of that matters. We make big deals out of these things, and it's not important. The Hunter Biden laptop and things, I don't care if he's running around with hookers and stuff, whatever. I mean, that doesn't... Who cares? Like, how does that affect me? He wasn't in a position to lead anything, right? He didn't have a government spot like his dad did. He didn't... None of that really matters. Okay? But the thing about the Ukraine, if he's involving his dad on business stuff, and if that ended up being true, I'm not saying it is or it isn't, I'm just saying if it ended up being true in a hypothetical universe, then that's definitely concerning, because it could be like a bribery thing, right? It could be because the president is not supposed to do that kind of stuff. And again, I'm not comparing Joe to Trump, because they each have their things, right? I'm not saying one's worse than the other. Everybody should get in trouble for all the bad stuff that they do. I'm going to lay that flat out. If you do bad stuff while you're in office, you should still get in trouble for it. The whole immunity thing is kind of like, But that's a whole other issue. But what the pardon did is it not only pardoned his son for things that people knew or had been in the news, but also for anything else that may come up or that may potentially be a thing, basically. So if some evidence had come out about this Ukrainian thing, the pardon covers that. You get what I mean? It's a really weird worded way to pardon somebody if that somebody is not actually guilty of something, right? So I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me, but it really doesn't matter in the end, because in January we're going to have a new president, and all that stuff is going to be different, and we're going to have to deal with the ramifications of that when that happens, right? So whatever the Bidens do now, it's got nothing to do with me. I will say though that if people are guilty of stuff, then they should pay the consequences. Always. If you're guilty of something, you have to pay the consequences. Nobody should just get away with things if they did something that rips people off or whatever. But I don't know. It's a tough situation. I suppose ethically. Morally, I don't care. Ethically, it's a whole other thing. On a little side note, I hadn't thought about mentioning this because I don't know how many people know about it, but anybody out there know about the super mayor, Tiffany Henyard? I don't know how you can manage to do this, but apparently she's a mayor of one town and a supervisor of another town, which is kind of like a mayor, but they don't have mayors, they have a supervisor, right? And she's been spending the money from these two places to fund stuff that she wants to do at their expense, and they caught her at it. And she's been fighting back legally and doing a bunch of stuff and be like, no, I'm the super mayor, I'm the people's mayor, you can't do nothing to me. And they just recently, in one of the two places, they switched things up. Instead of having a primary for when they're choosing who's going to be the candidates on the ballot for the election, because she's up for re-election, or she was in both places. Now she's only up for the re-election in one. But for the other place, they changed it to a caucus. And if you don't know political things, you will have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you do, then you're going to be like, oh, well, that's interesting. And the caucus picked a different nominee and not her. So she's not even up for re-election unless she gets the ballot changed or they do enough write-in votes. And I think it's great because from all the evidence and all the news coming out, it looks like she's been bilking the two towns for everything that they're worth. Spending money, going nuts. You know, that's not how you lead places. I got a sneeze coming on. Hold on. And what's doubly funny is because she ran on a platform of anti-corruption because the mayor and supervisor previous to her had been doing things like that, misusing funds and basically being corrupt. So she ran on a platform, I'm not going to be like that, I'm going to fix everything. And instead she's doing the same things. And she's getting busted for it. And that's an example, politically, of if you do something wrong, you suffer the consequences. And the consequences here is that she's been left off the ballot for re-election, so she's not even eligible, straight up, to run for her own position again. She has to be a write-in if she wants enough people to try to put her back. And it seems like that's not going to work because the majority is against her. And who knows? Maybe she never really did do anything wrong, but judging from all of the evidence that's come forward, she's 100% guilty as shit. To be perfectly honest. That's my belief. That's my belief. But that's it. That's what I got. I covered the things I wanted to talk about, and we had a lengthy talk about recording technology from tapes to MP3s and things for some reason. I don't know why we got into that. I still don't know what led to that. I'll have to re-listen back to the beginning of the episode. But thank you for tuning in. I appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate everybody's thoughts and comments and whatnot. You can always email me at uncannyspiritsclub@gmail.com if you have questions or if you have extra comments or anything, and I'll keep it anonymous if you want to. I won't say your name on the air if you choose to. If you don't, then I'll put you on blast. No. I'll make you famous. No, I'll just, I'll say, hey, Joe from Saskatoon says, this is the best show ever. And Jerry from Chicago says, this show is terrible, I hated it. I'll say that. Unless you don't want me to. It's fine. Not going to hurt my feelings. But this show will be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Google Play, wherever. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you'll find me. Look for the LTATM hashtag. Because, as always, you want to... Let's talk about the madness, let's talk about the magic, let's talk about the music. All of that is me. Despite claims from anyone else who might say otherwise. Who are delusional. But before I get delusional, I'm going to get out of here. Expect this episode to show up on YouTube within a few days, up to maybe a week and a half, depending on how lazy I get or if I forget. Hopefully not. But this'll be it. I mean it this time. I have fibbed a little bit in the last couple episodes by saying that I was not going to make another episode before the year was out. But this time I mean it. It's December 4th. I'm not going to do any more episodes until 2025. Okay? I don't care if you miss me. I'm not going to do another episode until then. So you're just going to have to wait in anticipation of what I've got to say. Just some of these things, like the pardon thing, I thought I was going to talk more about it, and I ended up talking more about whatever that was at the beginning of the show. The digital stuff, that became the centerpiece of the show, didn't it? And that wasn't even on the agenda. But some breaking news had happened with the pardon that I wanted to talk about, plus Survivor Series, plus the Marilyn Manson album. But that's all. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Don't forget to follow me on all the various social media things. And take care of yourselves. Have a good holiday. If you're celebrating the Christmas spirit, all that good stuff, have a good holiday. I'll see everybody in 2025.